The Armenian alphabet is an alphabetical writing system used to write Armenian. It was developed around 405 CE by Mesrop Mashtots, an Armenian linguist and ecclesiastical leader, and originally included 36 letters and now includes 39. The Armenian word for alphabet is aybuben, named after the first two letters of the Armenian alphabet ayb and ben. Armenian is written horizontally, left to right. Alphabet. Listen to the pronunciation of the letters in Eastern Armenian or in Western Armenian. Notes: 1. Only used in classical orthography, word initially and in some compound words. 2. Except in ov, who and ovk those. 3. Iranian Armenians pronounce this letter as like in classical Armenian. 4. In classical orthography, and are considered a digraph and a ligature. In Reformed orthography, they are separate letters of the alphabet. 5. In Reformed orthography, the letter appears only as a component of. In classical orthography, the letter usually represents V, except in the digraph Jew. The spelling reform in Soviet Armenia replaced with the trigraph. 6. Except in the present tense of to be, mims, you are enk, we are ekh, you are n, they are. 7. The letter is generally used only at the start or end of a word, and so the sound e is unwritten between consonants. Ligatures. Ancient Armenian manuscripts used many ligatures. Some of the commonly used ligatures are, etc. Armenian print typefaces also include many ligatures. In the new orthography, the character is no longer a typographical ligature, but a distinct letter with a place in the new alphabetic sequence, before o. Punctuation. Armenian punctuation is often placed above and slightly to the right of the vowel whose tone is modified, in order to reflect intonation. Armenian punctuation marks include the kkurtna are used as ordinary quotation marks and they are placed like French guillemets, just above the baseline is strongly discouraged in Armenian as they look too much like other, unrelated, Armenian punctuations. The storiket is used as a comma and placed as in English. The boot is used as a short stop and placed in the same manner as the semicolon, to indicate a pause that is longer than that of a comma, but shorter than that of a colon. In many texts it is replaced by the single opening single quote, or by a space engrave accent. The mid-jacket is used like an ordinary colon, mainly to separate two closely related clauses, or when a long list of items follows. The ver-jacket is used as the ordinary full stop, and placed at the end of the sentence. The ukaratsman is used as an exclamation mark. The shesht is used as an emphasis mark, and usually placed over the last vowel of the interjection word to indicate stress. The hartsakan is used as a question mark and placed after the last vowel of the questioned word, usually the stressed vowel. The apothas is used as a spacing apostrophe, only in Western Armenian, to indicate elision of a vowel, usually e. The yentamna is used as the ordinary Armenian hyphen. The pativ was used as an Armenian abbreviation mark, and was placed on top of an abbreviated word to indicate that it was abbreviated. It is now obsolete. Transliteration. ISO 9985 transliterates the Armenian alphabet from modern Armenian as follows. In the linguistic literature on classical Armenian, slightly different systems are in use. Hubshman and Mila have history and development. The Armenian alphabet was introduced by Mesrop Mashtots and Isaac of Armenia in 405 CE. Medieval Armenian sources also claim that Mashtots invented the Georgian and Caucasian Albanian alphabets around the same time. Traditionally, the following phrase, translated from Solomon's Book of Proverbs, is said to be the first sentence to be written down in Armenian by Mashtots. Knakelzim mastatayun yevzedx rat, imanelzedbans hankaroi. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. Various scripts have been credited with being the prototype for the Armenian alphabet. Pahlavi was the priestly script in Armenia before the introduction of Christianity, and Syriac, along with Greek, was one of the alphabets of Christian scripture. Armenian shows some similarities to both. However, the general consensus is that Armenian is modeled after the Greek alphabet, supplemented with letters from a different source. Sources for Armenian sounds not found in Greek. The evidence for this is the Greek order of the Armenian alphabet, the ligature for the vowel u, as in Greek, and the shapes of some letters which seem derived from a variety of cursive Greek. Quote, "It has been speculated by some scholars in African studies, following Dmitry Olderog, that the GEEZ script had an influence on certain letter shapes, but this has not been supported by any experts in Armenian studies. There are four principal calligraphic hands of the script. Erkatagia, or ironclad letters, seen as Mesrop's original, was used in manuscripts from the 5th to 13th century and is still preferred for epigraphic inscriptions. Boligar, or cursive, was invented in the 10th century and became popular in the 13th. It has been the standard printed form since the 16th century. Notgia, or minuscule, was invented for speed, was extensively used in the Armenian diaspora in the 16th to 18th centuries, and later became popular in printing. Shegagia, or slanted writing, is now the most common form. The earliest known example of the script's usage was a dedicatory inscription over the west door of the Church of St. Arcus in Tekor. Based on the known individuals mentioned in the inscription, it has been dated to the 480s. The earliest known surviving example of usage outside of Armenia is a mid-6th century mosaic inscription in the chapel of St. Polyactos in Jerusalem. A papyrus discovered in 1892 at Feynman containing Greek words written in Armenian script has been dated on historical grounds to before the Arab conquest of Egypt, i.e., before 640, and on paleographic grounds to the 6th century and perhaps even the late 5th century. It is now in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. The earliest surviving manuscripts written in Armenian using Armenian script date from the 7th–8th century. Certain shifts in the language were at first not reflected in the orthography. The digraph followed by a consonant used to be pronounced in classical Armenian, but due to a sound shift it came to be pronounced, and has since the 13th century been written. For example, classical became pronounced, and is now written. For this reason, today there are native Armenian words beginning with the letter, although this letter was taken from the Greek alphabet to write foreign words beginning with O. The number and order of their letters have changed over time. In the Middle Ages, 2 new letters were introduced in order to better represent foreign sounds. This increased the number of letters from 36 to 38. From 1922 to 1924, Soviet Armenia adopted a reformed spelling of the Armenian language. The reform changed the digraph and the ligature into 2 new letters, but it generally did not change the pronunciation of individual letters. Those outside of the Soviet sphere have rejected the reformed spellings, and continue to use the traditional Armenian orthography. They criticize some aspects of the reforms and allege political motives behind them. One of the classical accounts about the existence of an Armenian alphabet before Mashtots comes from Philo of Alexandria, who in his writings notes that the work of the Greek philosopher and historian Metrodorus of Skepsis on animals was translated into Armenian. Metrodorus was a close friend and a court historian of the Armenian Emperor Tigranes the Great, and also wrote his biography. Another 3rd century Roman theologian, Hippolytus of Rome, in his chronicle, while writing about his contemporary, Emperor Severus Alexander, mentions that the Armenians are amongst those nations who have their own distinct alphabet. Philostratus the Athenian, a sophist of the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, wrote, and they say that a leopardess was once caught in Pamphylia which was wearing a chain round its neck, and the chain was of gold, and on it was inscribed in Armenian lettering, the king Arsaces to the Nisaean god. According to the 5th century Armenian historian Movses of Koren, Bardesanes of Edessa, who founded the Gnostic current of the Bardesanites, went to the Armenian castle of Ani and read the work of a pre-Christian Armenian priest named Voyumb, written in the Mithraic script of the Armenian temples, in which, amongst other histories, an episode was noted of the Armenian king Tigranes VII erecting a monument on the tomb of his brother, the Mithraic high priest of the kingdom of Greater Armenia, Mazan. Movses of Koren notes that Bardesanes translated this Armenian book into Syriac, and later also into Greek. Another important evidence for the existence of a pre-Mashtotian alphabet is the fact that the Armenian heathen pantheon included Tyr, who was the patron god of writing and science. A 13th century Armenian historian Yerevanci, in his history, notes that during the reign of the Armenian king Leo the Magnificent, artifacts were found bearing Armenian inscriptions of the heathen kings of the ancient times. The evidence that the Armenian scholars of the Middle Ages knew about the existence of a pre-Mashtotian alphabet can also be found in other medieval works, including the first book composed in Mashtotian alphabet by the pupil of Mashtots, Chorion, in the first half of the 5th century. Chorion notes that Mashtots was told of the existence of ancient Armenian letters which he was initially trying to integrate into his own alphabet, used for other languages. For about 250 years, from the early 18th century until around 1950, more than 2,000 books in the Turkish language were printed using the Armenian alphabet. Not only did Armenians read this Turkish in Armenian script, so did the non-Armenian elite. An American correspondent in Marash in 1864 calls the alphabet Armeno-Turkish, describing it as consisting of 31 Armenian letters and infinitely superior to the Arabic or Greek alphabets for rendering Turkish. This Armenian script was used alongside the Arabic script on official documents of the Ottoman Empire written in Ottoman Turkish. For instance, the first novel to be written in Turkish in the Ottoman Empire was Vatan Pasha's 1851 Akabi Hikayesi, written in the Armenian script. When the Armenian Duzian family managed the Ottoman Mint during the reign of Abdülmecid, they kept records in Armenian script but in the Turkish language. For the middle of the 19th century, the Armenian alphabet was also used for books written in the Kurdish language in the Ottoman Empire. The Armenian script was also used by Turkish-speaking assimilated Armenians between the 1840s and 1890s. Constantinople was the main center of Armenian scripted Turkish press. This portion of the Armenian press declined in the early 20th century but continued until the Armenian genocide of 1915. The Kipchak-speaking Armenian Christians of Podolia and Galicia used an Armenian Armenian alphabet to produce an extensive amount of literature between 1524 and 1669. The Armenian script, along with the Georgian, was used by the poet Sayat-Nova in his Armenian poems. An Armenian alphabet was an official script for the Kurdish language in 1921 to 1928 in Soviet Armenia. Character encodings. The Armenian alphabet was added to the Unicode standard in version 1.0 in October 1991. It is assigned the range U+053058F. 5 Armenian ligatures are encoded in the alphabetic presentation forms block. On 15 June 2011, the Unicode Technical Committee accepted the Armenian dram sign for inclusion in the future versions of the Unicode standard and assigned a code for the sign U+058F. In 2012 the sign was finally adopted in the Armenian block of ISO and Unicode International Standards. The Armenian eternity sign, since 2013, a designated point in Unicode U+058D and another for its left-facing variant, U+058E, obsolete. Amshi is a character encoding developed between 1991 and 1999. Amshi was popular on the Windows 95 and Windows 98 operating systems. With the development of the Unicode standard and its availability on modern operating systems, the Amshi encoding has been rendered obsolete. Arasan-compatible. Arasan-compatible fonts are based on the encoding of the original Arasan font by Rand Papazian, which simply replaces the Latin characters of the ASCII encoding with Armenian ones. For example, the ASCII code for the Latin character A represents the Armenian character. An advantage of Arasan-compatible fonts over Armenian.It fonts is that writing does not require the installation of a separate program. Once the font is installed and selected for use, one can use the QWERTY keyboard to type in Armenian. A disadvantage over Armenian.It is that an Arasan-compatible font can only be used for one alphabetic script. Therefore, the user must change the font family when creating a multi-script document. Another disadvantage is that Arasan-compatible fonts only come in one native keyboard layout, Western Armenian phonetic. However, it is possible to have alternative keyboard layouts via the use of keyboard driver utilities. While Arasan-compatible fonts were popular among many users on Windows 95 and 98, it has been rendered obsolete by the Unicode standard. Keyboard layouts. The standard Eastern and Western Armenian keyboards are based on the layout of the font Arasan. These keyboard layouts are mostly phonetic and allow direct access to every character in the alphabet, because there are more characters in the Armenian alphabet than in Latin. Some Armenian characters appear on non-alphabetic keys on a conventional QWERTY keyboard.